What you are seeing is what ISIS feared more than drones, more than airstrikes, and more than the Iraqi army itself. At 63 years old, Abu Tashin al-Salhi wasn't slowing down. He was hunting for fun, with a .50 caliber rifle meant to destroy trucks and armored vehicles. He instead scoped ISIS fighters one by one from nearly 2 kilometers away. He started racking up so many kills that the enemy put a $250,000 bounty on his head. This is the unbelievable, brutal, and completely real story of the Sheikh of Snipers, the old man who fought 6 wars and became the deadliest marksman of Iraq's war against ISIS.
When you go out as a sniper, do you go out with a unit or do you go out on your own?
القناص ما ياخذ أوامر من أي شخص معين. أما قرار القتل راجع إلي.
It's a big burden of responsibility.
نعم. الرقم 343.
343 people.
مؤكد.
Wow.
At 63 years old, when most men his age were playing with grandchildren, Abu Tashin al-Salhi was doing what he'd done for over 4 decades, hunting enemies of Iraq. The terrorist in his crosshairs had no idea that death was watching him through a scope, delivered by a man who'd been perfecting this craft since before many of them were even born. By the time ISIS learned his name and placed a $250,000 bounty on his head, Abu Tashin had already sent many of their fighters to meet their maker. They called him the Sheikh of Snipers, Hawkeye, the terrorist hunter. But to understand how one man became the nightmare of an entire terrorist organization, we need to go back to where this legend began. Ali Jihad Obaid al-Salihi was born on July 1st, 1953 in Basra, Iraq, into a Shia Muslim family. His path to becoming one of history's deadliest snipers began in the most unexpected place, the Kuwaiti desert in the 1970s, where he worked as a shepherd watching over cattle and camels. Now, shepherding sounds peaceful, but in reality, criminal gangs regularly targeted livestock, making a rifle essential equipment. Young al-Salihi carried a French rifle for protection, and during those long, boring hours watching the herds, he discovered something remarkable about himself. While other shepherds might have dozed off or stared at the horizon, al-Salihi practiced shooting rabbits. Every shot, every adjustment to his aim, every successful hit revealed what would become obvious later. This man had a gift. He could put a bullet exactly where he wanted it, when he wanted it. The rifle felt like an extension of his body, and hunting became second nature. When asked years later why he joined the military, al-Salihi would simply say that hunting was his hobby. But this was underselling what would become a 4-decade military career that would span 6 different wars. The Russians recognized his talent immediately. When al-Salihi was selected for sniper training at a prestigious Soviet school in Belarus, he didn't just pass, he graduated second in his class, and he did it faster than expected. The instructors had rarely seen natural ability like his. Fresh out of training, he didn't wait around for an easy posting. The Yom Kippur War erupted in 1973, and al-Salihi volunteered immediately, joining Iraq's 5th Mountain Brigade fighting in the Golan Heights, alongside Syrian forces against Israel. This was where theory met reality. The discipline of military life, the weight of real combat, the responsibility of taking lives. Al-Salihi discovered it all felt natural to him. A year later, he was fighting in the Second Kurdish-Iraqi War, liberating provinces across Iraq. But he wasn't satisfied with his position in the Sadr Brigade. Something was missing. He kept searching for the right unit, the right mission, the right purpose. The Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s saw him back in action. 8 years of brutal combat that would have broken most men. Then came the invasion of Kuwait and the Gulf War, where he faced American and British forces for the first time. Through the uprisings after the Gulf War, through the 2003 invasion of Iraq where he again encountered US troops, al-Salihi kept fighting. Each conflict added layers to his expertise, each battle honed his skills further, but everything changed in 2014. ISIS had swept across Iraq and Syria like a plague, capturing vast territories, executing civilians, destroying ancient heritage sites, spreading terror wherever their black flags flew. The Iraqi military was in retreat, and the government was desperate. They needed every fighter they could get, especially those with experience. When the popular mobilization forces formed to combat ISIS, al-Salhi didn't hesitate. At 61 years old, when he should have been enjoying retirement with his 11 children, 5 daughters and 6 boys, he volunteered again. This time was different. This time, he'd found his true calling. The PMU stationed him in the Makhul Mountains of northern Iraq with a weapon that would become synonymous with his legend, the AM-50 Syed, an Iranian variant of the Shtir HS .50 caliber anti-material rifle. Now, let's be clear about what this weapon does. Anti-material rifles are designed to punch through concrete walls, disable vehicles by destroying engine blocks, and penetrate armored personnel carriers. The kinetic energy from these rounds is so massive that allegedly, even a near miss can kill from the shockwave alone. When a human body takes a direct hit from this rifle, the results are devastating. Al-Salhi himself noted that targets would get knocked back a meter or two when hit. But al-Salhi wasn't using this monster of a rifle on vehicles. He was using it on people, ISIS fighters specifically. His typical position would be on a hillside or elevated position overlooking ISIS-controlled areas. He'd arrive on his off-road motorcycle, wearing his signature black and white checkered scarf and fingerless gloves, looking more like an aging biker than one of the world's deadliest snipers. He'd set up his position, completely relaxed, something he insisted was essential for accurate shooting, and wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. The footage from this period shows the reality of his work. In one video, his spotter confirms 2 ISIS fighters positioned next to each other. Their heads are showing, the spotter says. Al-Salhi's response is calm, almost casual. Sweet, sweet, sweet. The massive rifle fires with a distinctive crack that echoes across the valley. Prayers to Muhammad and his family, he says after confirming the kill. The running tally appears on screen, 173 confirmed kills and counting. In another remarkable moment, members of the British press traveled into the combat zone, specifically to meet Abu Tashin and document his work. Journalists who normally embedded with frontline units found themselves sitting beside a 60-year-old sniper who had become a one-man anti-ISIS campaign. They watched him set up, listened to his stories, and witnessed firsthand the calm precision with which he operated. When interviewed about these killings, al-Salhi's philosophy was stark. "I don't feel a thing." He explained that God had blessed him with good eyes and natural shooting skills for a reason. These terrorists meant harm to his family, his country, his people. As far as he was concerned, only God could judge him for what he did with his gift. If he ever missed a shot, which was rare, he took it as a sign from God that the target was meant to live that day. The impact of his work went far beyond the body count. ISIS fighters began speaking of him in hushed tones, checking every hillside, every window, every possible sniper position before moving. The psychological effect was devastating. They knew he was out there, somewhere, watching through that scope. They knew that stepping into the open might be the last thing they ever did. Some ISIS units reportedly refused to operate in areas where al-Salhi was known to be active. The fear reached all the way to ISIS leadership. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS at the time, personally placed a $250,000 bounty on al-Salhi's head. Think about that. A terrorist organization controlling vast oil fields and making millions from various criminal enterprises thought one 60-something-year-old man was worth $250,000 dead.
Do ISIS know about you as an individual, and have they ever tried to target you? Do you have like a bounty on your head?
أبو بكر البغدادي دفع $250,000 موجود منشور بوكالة السيف قضاء على قناص الحشد الشعبي أو قطع رأسه.
Al-Salhi had a motto that he'd repeat in interviews, one that sent chills down the spines of his enemies. Beware of old men in a profession where most die young. His commitment to the fight was absolute. When his commanders gave him a month's leave to rest and see his family, he lasted exactly 12 days before returning to the battlefield. "I'm relaxed here," he'd say about being in combat. "My mind is relaxed." For al-Salhi, the battlefield was where he belonged. The stories of his encounters with enemy snipers became legendary. Once, he noticed a bird circling a date palm tree but refusing to land. Birds love dates, so why wouldn't it land? Al-Salhi studied the tree carefully and spotted what the bird had sensed, an ISIS sniper hidden in the branches. The problem was solved with a single shot. Another time, he faced off against a female ISIS sniper. When she had him pinned down, Al-Salhi played dead, collapsing dramatically when her shot passed close by. She made the fatal mistake of looking away, thinking she'd eliminated the famous Hawkeye. Al-Salhi rose up and ended the encounter with one shot. By 2017, Al-Salhi had participated in nearly every major battle against ISIS. The Battle of Baiji, where oil refineries changed hands multiple times. The Battle of Tikrit, Saddam Hussein's hometown. The liberation of Mosul, where ISIS had declared their caliphate. The Tal Afar offensive. Each battle added to his tally. Each operation demonstrated why one skilled marksman could change the course of engagements. His fellow soldiers spoke of him with awe. Here was a man old enough to be their grandfather, hauling a 30-pound rifle through mountains and deserts, fighting with more energy and determination than soldiers a third his age. He became more than just a sniper. He became a symbol of Iraqi resistance, proof that ISIS could be defeated, that these terrorists who seemed unstoppable could be hunted down one by one. September 2017. The war against ISIS was almost over. The terrorist group had lost nearly all their territory, reduced to a few isolated pockets of resistance. One of these last strongholds was Hawija, a city northwest of Baghdad. Al-Salhi was there, naturally, doing what he'd done for the past 3 years, hunting terrorists through his scope. The exact details of that final day remain unclear. What we know is that during the advance to liberate Hawija, one of the very last operations against ISIS in Iraq, Al-Salhi was hit by enemy fire. The man who'd survived 6 wars, who'd been shot at countless times, who'd become the boogeyman of ISIS, was mortally wounded in what would prove to be one of the final battles. He died on September 29, 2017, at the age of 63. The Sheikh of snipers had fired his last shot. The next day, thousands gathered in Basra for his funeral. Military commanders, government officials, tribal leaders, and ordinary citizens came to pay their respects. The man who'd spent 12 days on leave before rushing back to combat was finally at rest. He was buried in the Valley of Peace, a cemetery sacred to Shia Muslims, joining the countless warriors who died defending Iraq throughout its long, troubled history. The tributes poured in from across Iraq and the international military community. Here was a man who'd given his entire adult life to military service, who'd fought in 6 different conflicts across 5 decades, who'd eliminated 384 confirmed ISIS fighters at an age when most people struggle to climb stairs. He'd shown that skill, determination, and purpose could overcome age, that one man with a rifle and the will to use it could make a difference against seemingly overwhelming odds. In 2023, the Iraqi government erected a 7-meter-tall statue of Al-Salhi in Nasiriyah, his figure forever watching over the land he'd spent his life defending. School children learn his story. Military snipers study his techniques. His name has entered the pantheon of legendary marksmen alongside Simo Häyhä, Vasily Zaitsev, and Carlos Hathcock. But perhaps the most telling tribute came from an unexpected source. In ISIS propaganda found after the liberation of Mosul, there were numerous references to the old sniper and instructions on how to avoid him. Even in their internal communications, they couldn't bring themselves to say his name, as if speaking it would summon him. They were right to fear him. In the arithmetic of war, Abu Tashin al-Salhi had personally removed 384 threats to Iraqi security. Each shot he fired was one less suicide bomber, one less executioner, one less terrorist able to spread their poison. Abu Tashin al-Salhi proved something important in those final years of his life. He showed that sometimes, in the face of absolute evil, what you need isn't sophisticated technology or massive armies. Sometimes what you need is one determined individual with the skills and the will to stand up and say, "Not in my country." Sometimes what you need is an old man with a rifle and a gift from God, turning himself into the nightmare the terrorists check for in the shadows. They called him the Sheikh of Snipers, and the title was well earned. In a profession where most die young, Abu Tashin al-Salhi lived to 63, fought to the very end, and left behind a legacy written in saved lives and freed cities. His motto proved prophetic. They should have been more wary of the old man with the rifle. By the time they learned to fear him, 384 of them had already learned that lesson far too late.